Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Um, would you believe I went on a bike ride?
Right. What does
And
that mean? How many miles?
oh god, I don't know exactly. I know that the bike ride's around an hour and 15, and consistently sweating bollocks, and my legs are in immense pain.
Have you got DOMs already?
Yeah. So this week, I don't ask me why. I decided, oh yeah, I just want to go on lots of bike rides. So having not done it much before, I just went on 3 bike rides this week.
Okay.
So now my leg, yeah, like it's catching up to me, is what I'm saying.
You're an old man.
I am an old man. I'm only in my 20s.
So how many hours is that of cycling for the
It's
last
it's
week?
only it's only like 3.5, maybe 4 at most.
Okay, but it's still more than you were doing before, though, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 more hours more than I was doing last week. Yeah,
That's decent, though. You're getting into it. And I think over the last week, the weather's been, well, throughout the week, the weather's been all right. It's just this weekend has been very on and off, hasn't it?
yeah, we had a mini heat wave, didn't we? And then this, I think it was like Saturday, it just started raining again for no reason. But
Yeah, Friday night it pissed it down for about 20 minutes, and then it got better, and then
mhm.
that was pretty much the story ever since.
Exactly, like people in this country, we complain no matter what the weather is. Like we complain when it's raining, we complain when it's a lot warmer, and now we're complaining again because it's back to rain again. There's no winning.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the rain. So personally, when it was hot, the only time I was complaining is because we're not equipped for the weather that we had. Like we don't have air cons.
Mm,
We've got fans at best, and I mean, a fan is only going to move around hot air, isn't it? It's not going to produce cold air.
yeah,
So it was a bit of a challenge when my laptop was sounding like it was going to take off, but we did our best.
literally, I had that. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep till like 2 in the morning just because sweating bollocks. And then you're left with the dilemma of, do I leave the window open and have Lord of the Flies, but I'll be able to sleep a bit warmer, or and also as well, you'd be woken up at like 3 in the morning by owls or whatever kind of birds are squawking. Or
Where do you live? In a forest?
we actually do have a mini forest not far from us.
Oh, that's not bad.
Literally like 10, 15 minutes down the road, we've got like Farthing Downs. So yeah,
Okay.
we got all of that. And then if you leave it closed, you're boiling and just fucking
Yeah. Lose lose, isn't it?
exactly. But going back to the cycling, like the first time that was the first time I'd cycled since I was in Germany. And the first
Okay.
time that I cycled in Germany was on a velodrome. And that reminded me of the first time you cycle on a velodrome. It's not like a road bike or a mountain bike because
No,
they're,
I remember you were telling me about it, but yeah, do tell me again.
yeah, they're fixed gears. So obviously there's no brakes or anything. The only way you are able to brake is by basically just standing on it. And like it's got what's known as an eccentric muscle contraction, where the muscle's lengthening while still under tension. And that's what causes the most damage to the muscle. So the day after, I know we talk about like not being able to walk after leg day or after cycling. I'm probably going to be all right tomorrow, but after a day, after like 2 or 3 hours cycling on a velodrome, you're in so much pain the next day, even that evening. And the first day that we cycled on the velodrome with those bikes, there's a flat bit on the inside that's like, because a velodrome's an oval shape, isn't it?
Yeah.
Velodrome's an oval shape, and then obviously it's got these very steep banks on the side,
Yeah.
especially at the ends where you turn around. And I was on the flat bit on the inside. I was going way, way too quick in the big bend, and I ended up going up those steep ramps and then falling over
Oh,
and ended
did you
up.
actually fall over though?
Yeah. There was a brilliant picture where my elbow still hasn't really recovered from it. I took a bunch of skin off my elbow, as well
Ouch.
as yeah, and on my knee and everything like that. And then that evening, I went to go and play lacrosse, where you wear elbow pads. And
Yeah.
I took it off
Oh,
after, and I took off like another layer of skin whilst I did it. and it was like, and that was horrible.
So for a non-cyclist, how did you find going around on a slope at speed?
Oh, terrifying! Like, because your instincts, like your fear is kind of okay. It's holding you back quite a lot. So basically, how do I put it? Like that, you first practice by you're going round on the inside on the flat bit, and then on the straights they're a bit they're not there's a angle to them, but they're not as steep as on the bends.
Yeah.
The bends are more of a lot steeper and a lot harder to go around. And so what you first do is you go up and then you go onto those straights and then you come back down before the bend. And then eventually you get to the point where you're going into the bends and you just got to speed up and go for it. But yeah, it's weird because you're having to lean to the right, depending which way you're going round. You're basically having to lean into the bend. So if I'm going round anti-clockwise,
Yep.
okay, and the bend, that means that the higher point is on my right and the lower point is to my left on the inside.
Yep.
Then I've got to lean to my right almost.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then as you go into one of those bends, you've got to lean into the bend. So I've got to lean to my left almost, which is completely against all logic. But then it actually makes sense because that helps with the momentum to get you round.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You need like a good balance, because if you go in as if you're going on a straight slope, just going straight forward, your subconscious mind kind of keeps you straight on balance. But on a slope, you need to keep your balance at different sides. And that's where it becomes a little bit trickier when you're going like, I don't know, 20 miles per hour or whatever.
It's like when you see those MotoGP people, when they're going around tight bends, they'll lean into it and they'll also bring their knee out as well. It looks quite weird when they do it. And they're like this minimal height off the ground, which is just mental.
Yeah, going at like 100 miles per hour around the corner. It's like insane.
No. And then we eventually, as the semester went on, we built up towards doing like a relay of sorts. So, you know, where you've got four people stacked in front of one another. And I led off first because I was easily the slowest. I mean, is that really a surprise for me?
It depends how much leg strength you've got, to be honest.
I mean, oh yeah. Do I brag about myself? Yeah. So we did
might as well.
So my degree was sports science, and so you did a bunch of testing in the labs, and one of them was a VO2 max test on a bike, and you know it basically builds up to where you're exerting maximal force whilst also measuring your oxygen and CO2 output, like, and everything, and it can tell you your maximum, basically the amount of air you can take in into your lungs. And they did me, and they did a guy who was a proper semi-pro cyclist. He's got sponsorships and everything, and I matched his watt output. So we put out the same amount of force, but he was shorter and lighter than me.
Right. Okay.
So in terms of power to weight ratio, he was far superior, but I was happy that I was at least able to, you know, be somewhat competitive in that aspect.
So excessively drinking isn't all bad, is that what you're saying?
Excessively drinking and just lifting weights a bit. Yeah, it's all right.
It does the job.
Yeah, just once or twice a week, it's all good.
I mean, if you can lift weights twice a week in lockdown, you've got something going right for you. If you found
you're a lucky bastard.
To say the least.
Yeah, I can't wait till gyms open back up.
Do you know what? I've been looking for places just for weights, like free weights, even to just lie down on the floor and just get some dumbbells and lift them from anywhere and anything. I can't wait to do that. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because I think you're going to have to book times to go to the gym, and it's going to have to be like weeks in advance and whatnot. And I don't think I'm that organized to be able to do that. Quite a lot of the times, if I don't feel like going to the gym, I won't go to the gym at some point. So I'll be bored at home and then I'll just go randomly. So I don't think that'll work for me. That's why I think I need some weights at home so I can just do what I want when I want.
Have you been able to find resistance bands as well?
Well, funny story, right? So I got resistance bands, about a year ago, because I had a vision. Well, basically with work, I was staying in hotels quite a lot, traveling and all that sort of stuff. So going to the gym wasn't always not appropriate, but I couldn't always go to the gym basically. So I got these resistant bands and I got this ab roller, and I got a few basic things to do some sort of exercises. And I started using the resistance bands as soon as lockdown started. And one of the bits of the resistance bands clips into like in between doors, so you can actually have somewhere to pull from. So I put it on top of the door frame where the door closes. So I would have like a incline row going in. And as I started doing that, I did about 3 or 4 reps until it snapped and the door opened and I went flying back into the other side of the room. So that's not even the worst part of the story. There's a massive thud, right, in the building. My girlfriend stands there on the other side of the flat, like looking around, not even bothering to ask if I'm okay. So I was like, yeah, don't worry, I'll die in peace.
Where did it hit you? I loved if it had just smacked you in the face. Like,
no, I was luckily not. It just hit me right in the chest, and because of the force that I was using, I just went flying back. As I was already leaning backwards, I went flying back, and after that, I've just been like, yeah, I'm not using them. I'm scarred for life now.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck that. And I'm just so done with body weight workouts now. Like, there's only so many times you can do press ups and squats and planks for
What we had lockdown start. Well, things started to close down. What, middle of March, end of March, like 20th of March-ish.
They gradually eased it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
restricted. Yeah. Go on.
Well, I get what you're saying. And I think last time I went to the gym was probably like 15th of March, I would say. It took me until something like the 13th, 14th of April to be done with bodyweight exercise. So I lasted about 3 weeks, which, yeah.
Better than most people.
Do you think?
I bet you there were some people who, after the first or second week, were just like, oh. Because I was probably done after the 3rd or 4th week as well. And I've been, I've just been finding ways to do little and often. Because if I did it for like 1 hour straight of different exercises, I'd just lose my mind. So I'll do a bit before work, a bit at lunch, and a bit after. So kind of spread it out. That way you're constantly moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do the same.
That's quite good to do it, because I think it's also keeping your mind busy with not occupying it for too long and almost boring it, and then you're doing something which occupies psychologically probably, and you think, oh, you've done more than you actually have.
Or I'm trying to think, because it kind of relates to like when, like, you're told when you're studying in school and that you want to do it in small chunks, or at least make it very regular. Because what I was told was you wanted to study for 45 minutes, rest for 15, and then you wanted to kind of repeat that process. And it's kind of similar in that way, where you're doing a little bit and then you're resting and doing something else, and then you're going and doing a little bit more. Because have you heard of, what's the guy's name? Pavel Suline, I think it is. Basically advocates for what he advocates for is not training until you're fucking broken. So what he has set up in his office is he has a trap bar deadlift and a pull-up bar, and every time he gets up, he'll do 8 reps of the deadlift, and then he'll do as many pull-ups as he's able to, but he won't like try and push past that, so that he's doing it each and every single time. And eventually that will obviously add up. Let's say you stand up in an hour gap, you stand up twice, for example, and you can do, at a push, you can do 3 pull-ups. So you're doing 6 pull-ups an hour, and over a working day, that's 9 hours. That will add up.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think I've heard of a guy, I don't know what his name is, but he was saying that if your muscles are sore the next day, you've overdone it because you can't train the next day. I don't know if it's the same guy.
You're thinking of Firas Zahabi, who is George St. Pierre's trainer. So George St. Pierre is a UFC fighter.
Yeah.
Who I don't know what weight he fights in, but
I think it's lightweight. Of those featherweight, lightweight.
He's quite mid. Yeah, I don't know exactly what his weight is, but either way, he's an incredibly talented fighter and martial artist. And that guy, Firas Zahabi, is his trainer, and so he argues for the fact that you should do a little bit every single day. And he uses the example of the pull-up, where if you can do a maximum of 10 pull-ups, I only want you to do 2 or 3 the next day. And that's it. And then the following day you'll do 2, following day you'll do 2. So that eventually over the course of a week, you'll be doing, if you do it 5-6 days a week, you've already hit 10 or more. And so that accumulative volume, you take that, you do that the next week, and then eventually you can add 1 more on each day, so that you're doing, so over a 5-day period, if you do 2 pull-ups, you're doing 10. And then if you do 3 pull-ups over a 5-day period, you're then doing 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an easy way to increase your volume, and an easy way to get stronger at whatever exercise it is. And you can apply this to anything really, like cycling.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a very good thing, especially for pull-ups. I think when we were younger, my coach was literally pushing us to do 2 pull-ups every land session that we did, and we were thinking, I can do more than 2 pull-ups. And being 8 or however old I was, 2 pull-ups were enough to push me, because we did it every single day before training, and that was 5 times a week, where we pushed it. And I remember at the end of the season, we were about to leave for summer, and he asked us to do like 6 pull-ups every day. So definitely see that as a legit thing to work from. Yeah. And that would build strength as well, with especially something like a body weight of, pull-ups or dips or anything like that.
Yeah, you can apply it to really any form of exercise that you're talking about. And I think, for someone that's starting out, or even like is at a good level of training, you can still push yourself and still get stronger that way. It lends itself well to consistency, because you're not training up to a point where you could potentially get injured.
Yeah, but that was this guy's, whatever you said his name was. Sorry, I forgot. He literally said, if your muscles sore the next day, you've overdone it, and then you can't train to the same level that you've trained the previous day, because you're already sore and your muscles are hurting. So he said, you've got to consistently train at a level where, of course, you're pushing your muscles, but you're not pushing them to the level that they can't work to the same level the next day.
Yeah, and he talks about the flow state, which I actually find really interesting, because there's this graph, isn't there? And along the bottom, there's like the intensity, like the difficulty of the session. And then the other one, I can't remember the other one. Shit. Oh, I can't remember it, but basically there's a sweet spot where you want it to be challenging, but you don't want it to be too challenging, because you want to be able to go back and repeat it. I'm butchering this a little bit. Let me go and find flow state.
I think we're very much talking about the same point, just wording it very differently.
Yeah, I'm just trying to elaborate on what you were talking about, basically. So flow state. Yes, right. Where are... So there you go. You're tethering the line between the difficulty and your own skill. So that's the thing you're tethering the line between. And you obviously want, as you increase, your skills will obviously improve, and that means that you can improve the difficulty of the thing you're training for. And then as you go up, you want to try and maintain it so that you're in that sweet spot, and that will adjust as you go on. So that's basically the point, and you can apply this to anything.
Yeah, very good stuff. So anyone wanting to improve on strength or any other sport, that's some good points.
Did you watch the FA Cup?
FA Cup. I started watching the first half, Chelsea versus Leicester. I think there was about one chance in the first half where it came close to a goal, and that was it. So it was a little bit boring, to say the least, really. But I didn't. Of course, we recorded the previous Chelsea game against Man City when Chelsea were playing against Man City. Sorry, overlapped there slightly. So I didn't get to watch a lot of it, but I think that game was much better than the FA Cup games, because they all seem to be a little bit boring, if I'm not going to lie.
Well, they had a lot more to play for, I think, in that City-Chelsea game, because City were fighting to stay in contention to win the league, although we knew it was inevitable they wouldn't. In Chelsea, you're still fighting for a Champions League spot, right?
So really need any 3 points that can come our way. But with the FA Cup, I think Lampard's made it quite clear that Chelsea are not going to disregard that competition, because it's the only real piece of silverware that they could have won from the start of the season. Of course, there was the Carling Cup, but I don't think it brings any financial rewards or any sort of, publicity and popularity for the club winning that. So that's why a load of football clubs don't really take it seriously. Whereas the FA Cup, you get a lot more recognition for it. So I think now you've got, Man United playing against Chelsea in the semis, and then Arsenal playing against Man United and Newcastle. So you've got relatively big teams in that in those semis, where I don't know who's going to be the winner between Man United and Newcastle, but you would assume it will be Man City and Newcastle. I would assume it would be Man City.
Yeah, I was watching the Man United Norwich game, and that was there was one point where Norwich they flicked a set piece in, and the Norwich player headed it towards the Man United goal. It was going in, and then one of the other Norwich players got in the way on the line, and it bounced off, and it was going in. So they ended up defending their own goal, and I just thought that was so typical of Norwich's luck this season.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about Norwich this season because of the way they've approached it. It's like Fulham a few years ago. They just went fully attacking. There's very little defence. And for a team who've come up from the Championship to play that way, when they've played that way in the Championship, it's very ballsy. And there's a lot more quality in the Premier League for that to happen. So those teams who've just promoted from the Championship to play the same way as they have in the Championship is very, very risky, because the quality so much higher, where it's not just launch up the field, get the defender to head it, get your striker to head it, get your defender to head it, and then just kick it up, and then someone goes and makes a run for it. So I think that's why they're down there. I credit to them. They've done really well to get into the Premier League, but that way is renowned not to really work for a team who hasn't got much quality. So going back to the point where we're speaking about the quality of games, I think there's quite a few good teams now in the semis with Chelsea and Man United. And from a Chelsea perspective, this season, playing against Man United has been dreadful. I don't know, we've lost against them 3 times. And it's just, I don't understand why. Because, again, biased opinion, I think we've got a better youth system coming through. We've got better youth players coming through. And now we've got better players coming in and wanting to play for us. So I don't see why we can't beat them when we can beat Man City, Arsenal, Tottenham, Liverpool.
Well, Chelsea have always had a good youth system for a while now. The last couple of years, they've been churning out some pretty decent talents, or at least they have good prospects. But then they've had managers like Mourinho who just want instant success. And so they'll bring in someone else who's ready to play now. And then they'll just loan out those young players to some Dutch team or wherever. And then that's all they'll really do.
Yeah, I definitely see your point. And this transfer ban has been a blessing in disguise, where it actually let the youngsters come in and show that they're actually really decent. Be it not all the youngsters have performed, to the extent that Drogba-like elite level.
Yeah.
You got to remember, Tammy Abraham, for example. People have been saying he hasn't been consistent enough and he's so overrated. Well, he's just come in. He's ripped apart the Championship last season, and now he's come in. He's played relatively well in the Champions League, let alone the Premier League. And now they're saying that Greenwood's better, and all of Man United's youth players are so much better, and all the Chelsea academy players are. What's the wording? I saw that on that Instagram. They're overpriced and they're too hyped up for their own good. So I know it's a very biased viewpoint to say, and I've picked on that one. But you've got these players who are literally have just turned 20, 21, and they're performing at a Premier League level, playing against players who have been at the top level for however many years. And I think any youngster coming in now is such an exciting time for them in any sort of team where you've got this English quota or homegrown quota for players that you've got to have with, is it 8 players? Now the Premier League and the FA are saying that that's potentially going to be moved up to even higher up. So it's very exciting because all these youngsters are going to be getting their opportunities. And of course, we've had the likes of Billy Gilmore, who is, 18? And he's played against Liverpool and Everton for 2 games, and he's already being hyped as the next.
I know that they've been speaking about introducing a quota. I didn't know that they'd actually. Are they bringing it in this season then?
So this quota for 8 homegrown players has been in for years. I think they've had it for about 6, 7, 8 years. They've had a quota beforehand where it was like 3 players, and they've moved up to 6, and now it's 8. So now the Premier League and the FA are having, from what I know, very heated discussions, with the FA saying we want to increase it up to 16, with the Premier League saying no, the quality of the English team has increased. 8 is enough. If we increase it, there's a risk of the quality going down. So there is an argument from 2 sides, which I really do understand, because there's pros and cons to both. And you look at it and you think the English team has gotten better, hasn't it? When you think about it, whether it's the manager, whether it's the actual development of the players, you'll probably say it's both that have had an effect on it.
Yeah.
So this quota has been in for, as I say, at least 6, 7 years, and it has been working. So I personally don't see why it needs to be brought up when you've got these youngsters, especially now at these big clubs like Chelsea, like Man United, even Man City have got, Phil Foden, coming in, and they're home players who those clubs can easily go purchase someone else from Brazil who costs them peanuts and can do whatever with the ball that the English player probably can't. Do you know what I mean?
So wait, the current quota is 8, right? And they're wanting to bring it up to 16.
Or 16 or 12, yeah. But they're definitely wanting. The FA are wanting to bring it up. The Premier League don't want it moved from 8. Okay. They're happy with 8.
I'm just trying to think, because the match day squad, you've obviously got the starting 11, and you've got how many on the bench?
Well, temporarily at the moment, 9. It's usually 7.
Okay, so the match day squad would be 16 people. No. 18.
18 people.
It would be
At the
18.
moment, 20.
Okay. So out of 20 people temporarily, so out of 18 people typically, you would have 12 being English. That seems quite high.
And that's where the Premier League is saying we don't want that because the quality will go down.
Yeah.
So, of course, you've got. They don't have to be English. Don't get me wrong. You've got the likes of Paul Pogba, who played at Man United's academy when he was really young, and because he was the quote is, you've got to be playing at an English club from when you're 18 to 21. That's when your homegrown quota hits.
Right. So they don't necessarily have to be English.
No.
Right.
As long as the talent identification has been found at an early age and developed at an English club or a domestic club, whether it's Wales, I think it's okay, Cardiff and Swansea, because they're part of the English leagues. It's okay because you've got the likes of Christensen at Chelsea, who's also Danish, and he's technically a homegrown player. And I'm sure there's plenty more players that are not actually English, but they've been identified at an early age and brought into the country to play for these youth academies, I guess you can call them, and been developed within the country to now them have come back and then they're able to be they're able to be qualified for that home quota.
Right, okay. I feel like 12 is too much. Having 8 English or homegrown players has definitely helped to improve the quality of the England team. Maybe meet in the middle and say increase it to 10. Would 10 make a massive difference, do you think?
See,
or is this just semantics?
Yeah, I think it's more of that because you've got the big clubs like Man City, like Chelsea, like Man United, who sign a goalkeeper who's on the verge of retiring, like Rob Green, like Scott Carson, like Lee Grant, where they're not really doing anything, but they've been signed as a retirement player, brought in just to tick off the not homegrown quota, where they don't actually have enough English or homegrown players in the team, but they're just going to buy an old player, bring him in, and he's going to sit on the bench for the whole year. And then that's going to tick a box. Same thing with what Chelsea did with Drinkwater a few years ago. Overpaid for a player, which was not worth what they paid for him, but that ticked a box, and they were able to use him at least.
I didn't know that that's why they signed him. I thought they signed him because they genuinely wanted him.
He played. Really? Yeah, he played about 10 times, and he was not a good performer. And the way he's gone down now, he's been caught drink driving and all that sort of thing, and it's been very, very weird because if clubs are going to go that way, then I think it should be increased. Don't get me wrong, because I think that's a way for them to get out of it, and it's a tick box. But now, of course, you've had the Chelsea transfer ban where they've brought in however many youth players, and that's going to help, of course, the quota in however many years, because that's not only going to be domestic grown players, it's going to be club grown players, which I think at the moment is at 4. So it's positives, I think, for the future. It's been looking not so positive a few years ago. If you looked at it before the transfer ban for the likes of Chelsea and before Man City got hit with it's quite a hefty fine, wasn't it? It's like £250,000. I mean, for them it's not hefty, but for
that's just fair change to them.
Yeah, a few pennies in the pocket. But if you look at it from a bigger perspective, now they're potentially going to be banned from European football. How many players are going to be leaving them?
Yeah, because they're not going to get the chance to play in the Champions League. They're still in, right? So they could still win it this year.
That would be the biggest middle finger to UEFA.
That would be so funny. Because it reminds me of that year when Chelsea were outside the Champions League qualifying because they finished 5th, I think, didn't they? And they ended up winning it.
Yeah.
And that ended up kicking Spurs out, and then Harry Redknapp got sacked. And then they were talking about him signing to coach England, which never happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think the story was quite the same because there's been numerous occasions with Liverpool in 2005 when they came like fifth as well in the league, and they went and won the Champions League that year. So it's happened before, and then
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah.
Ah,
But of course, with the Chelsea thing, it's happened more recently, and because they knocked out another English team who would have probably deserved it more than Chelsea that year to go into the next year. It was a bigger story than the Liverpool one.
yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking about coming back to the quota and everything.
Yeah,
Germany did this as well after the 2002 World Cup. They said that they need to have a quota of German players in each team as well, and they need to
yeah,
have a quota of homegrown players as well. And they ended up winning the World Cup in 2014. So
yeah. And I also think that the culture of English clubs and the players. If you look at it before, the likes of Sancho, for example, there wasn't really English players going abroad and playing. That all of them stayed in domestic clubs, playing in domestic leagues, whereas the German players will go abroad and will play elsewhere. But I think it has become more common for English players to go and play elsewhere in Europe, which I think can only benefit the national team because that gives more experience. When beforehand you were in 2006, 2010, all the players were very much domestic players, except David Beckham, who went to play in America by that time.
I'm just looking at the German rules. Hang on, let me share. So you can have 8 players who must have been trained locally,
Yeah,
and you also need to have 4 others which were trained by a club or association in Germany. So in total, they need 12 players from Germany, and 8 of them need to be local, which is a bit different to how it is in England, because
yeah,
they could just sign someone and that could form part of their quota. Whereas if a German club signed someone that was German, that wouldn't fit actually it would fit one of the 4 remainders, but they also need to have 8 others which trained at their club. I think that's pretty good, I think, actually, because it forces the clubs to keep having a turnover of youth players coming through.
yeah. I definitely see that as well. It's almost flipped over with the English one because the English one you need 4 players who've been trained up by the club, and then 8 in total trained domestically. So it has to
Okay.
be 4 and 4 basically.
Yeah.
Which Germany is very different though, isn't it? When you look at it, you've only got 2, well, arguably 1 team who pushes in Europe every year for the
One,
silver.
maybe 2, because you've got
Yeah,
Bayern Munich and then Dortmund. Every 3 or so years, they'll rally and they'll do all right.
yeah. So the league is not as competitive as the Premier League,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that's the beauty of the Premier League, where except this year, every year has been a lot closer with competition for to get into the Champions League spots. Whereas you look at even in Spain or Italy, Spain has historically been a 2-horse race for however many years, and then it's only become a 3-horse race quite recently with Atletico coming into Barcelona and Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Italy, you look at it, there have been 1-horse race for the last 8,
It's
10
just
years.
been Juventus dominating everyone.
Yeah, and beforehand it was Inter, and do you know what I mean? There's a trend there. So I think looking at other leagues, you've got to be very careful because they're all very different leagues. So with the Premier League being more competitive, you've got to be very wary to not push it too far, to then lower the level of it and the quality, to then make it less competitive.
That's true. And what's good for the national team won't necessarily be good for the Premier League. And I think
It's almost a big contrast, though, isn't it? Because if you push it into having all of your players being domestically trained, that's going to be brilliant for the national team, but it's going to be horrific for the league.
Yeah.
But then if you do it the other way around, it's going to be brilliant for the league, but it's going to be horrific for the national team. So where we're looking at 8 players, maybe even 10, like you said, that could be a perfect balance of having half of your team as the homegrown quota, half your team as helping push the quality up and making it competitive. And I'm not saying that the homegrown players are not helping the quota, helping the quality of the league. I'm just saying that if you bring in players from elsewhere, they could be pushing the players domestically to perform better. So the improvement could still be there, where you've got, at Liverpool, for example, you've had Alexander-Arnold. He wouldn't have developed to have been who he is now had, what's his name, Nathaniel Klein not got injured. He got his chance and then he pushed for it, and now he's their first choice. So it's kind of like you give what you get. And with players that are coming in from abroad, they're always going to push the players from domestic trained clubs further and make the national team potentially better as well. So you've got to have the right balance. And I think 8-10 players it is the boundary for me.
Yeah, and then also those players, when it comes to those international tournaments, they'll be used to playing against that quality of opposition, and then that will also help affect their performance.
Yeah. So all in all, that's again, we've got to be very careful with looking at other leagues. So I think what we've just discussed there, for me, that works. But then you look at things from, was it China? They've imposed this ban now, or not a ban, but a tax ban, I guess you can call it, where they went out and they bought a load of players when they've had all these new owners come in, and they bought players like Oscar for 60 million. Not sure he was worth it. They bought...
That's one way to screw up your career.
Yeah, they bought all these players, and all these clubs started going, hang on a second, we don't have a player who can go out there and wants to ruin his career but earn a shitload of money. So the Chinese government went, actually, you can only do that to 3 foreign players. You can only buy 3 foreign players, and those 3 foreign players, you're going to pay 100% tax on their value and their wages.
On their value?
Yeah. So what you pay for them to the other club. So if you pay 50 million for a player, you have to pay 50 million to the Chinese government.
A year, or just as a one-off?
Just a one-off. And then you have to pay however much tax on their wages as well.
That's mental.
So you've got that extreme where they went, we'll buy a few players that are overrated, and we'll bring them in. And then the Chinese government, actually, we can make a load of money out of this, so we're just going to stamp it down. And the Chinese players are going to go, and they're going to become the best players in the world.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that worked out that way.
I might have seen something somewhere that the Chinese government wants the Chinese football teams to be world champions by 2050 or something. And they're currently putting a lot of money and investment into their youth system and everything, trying to make their league better.
I remember when Oscar just left to go there from Chelsea, and he dribbled past one of their players, and it was right by the linesman. And because he dribbled past him so quickly and he did whatever tricks, the linesman tripped over himself and he fell over. And it was like, well, if that doesn't sum up your league when your referees can't even keep up with the players, not even keep up right up to their feet. Do you know what I mean? You can always look at it from a distance. But that made me laugh. If you haven't watched it, Google it.
That is hilarious.
He literally stacks it on live TV.
But what they're doing there isn't that far-fetched, because the MLS did that initially. I'm pretty sure they couldn't bring anyone in, and then from outside. And then David Beckham was the first international player to go over there. And now it's called the Beckham rule, where they can sign I think, 2 marquee players from outside of the US or that haven't come up through the ranks, and that they can pay them higher wages and things because they have a salary cap.
Yeah, America's a bit weird because, of course, they've got their own system without relegation promotion. So they do it on how much money the owner has, but that doesn't relate to the fact that they've all got to have the same funding. So with the likes of LA Galaxy, they've got very rich owners, and those rich owners will go and get your David Beckhams, your Steven Gerrards, your Zlatan Ibrahimovic's. But then you've got players like Portland Timbers or whatever they're called, without disrespect to them. They can't attract players like that, be it they're not in LA. That might be one thing, but also they just can't fund players on 150, 200, $500,000 a week. So it's a bit strange. I don't really understand how it works there, because they are supposed to be having that, the draft system where everyone gets the same amount of funding, but then it's like some teams can still attract better players, like you had with New York City when they had Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, and then David Villa in the same team. It's like, well, how can you have 3 players that have won the Champions League, won everything in Europe, and now they're playing in that one team? That's not very fair. But then you've got a set amount of how much you can spend over a year, because I can bet those 3 players earn more than the rest of the squad.
Oh, for sure. The rest of the squad combined.
Together, yeah.
Weren't they also owned by the same people that own Man City?
Yeah, so they're building an empire, aren't they? The Man City owners, with having a team with Melbourne, and having a team in every continent. And yeah, it's becoming a bit silly because they're transferring players from Man City to New York, for example. Like, why did Lampard end up playing for Man City when he went to New York?
Because it's just sign on the dotted line. It's all good.
Yeah, because then you're our player, and then we'll basically tell you where to go, and we'll transfer you. But what's transfer when the owner says you go there and you go there?
I mean, they had the same thing with, it was Watford and I think Udinese, where the same guy owned, it was some Italian team and Watford as well. And Watford were in the Championship, and they loaned like 8 players.
It was more than that. You're right with Udinese. They had, I mean, I don't know if this is right, but I'm pretty sure it was more than 8 players. I think it was around about 18 or 17 players. Do check that for me, because this is actually a very interesting point that you've raised. And they, of course, Watford have had this, I don't know if they're still owned by the same guy, but they still have very strong connections with Udinese. And yeah, 18 players in one team, technically from another team, just looks so shady.
So it says here on BBC Sport, and this is the end of August, they had 10 players on loan. But then I want to see if that was any more. So
what year was this in?
This is 2012-2013 season. So from the looks of it, I'm showing my screen now. In total, they had 14 loan signings from abroad. And I believe, like, Vidra was a big one. I remember Matic Vidra. Didn't he play for them the next year as well?
Yeah, I think he ended up staying there or something like that.
Yeah, he was good for a while, and then he just kind of fell off for whatever reason. I don't know if they ended up getting promoted. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But yeah, they quit. They slammed that door shut instantly. They were like, "There's no way we're going to let you guys loan out someone from a parent company." And there are loads of other examples of this. You've got the RB Leipzig, which are obviously owned by Red Bull, and there's RB Salzburg as well. So they could just switch players between them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually illegal for to have the same owners play in continental games with each other. So say if the Champions League spot in the group stage, for example, Red Bull Leipzig get in with RB Salzburg, it's like, well, what's there to say that Salzburg are not going to lose to Leipzig on purpose so they can get the points and get promoted over, if there's close competition, whatever the circumstances. What's there to say? The owner can't tell the coaches to fix the games. You can't. So UEFA, I know, have made it illegal to do that, but I just don't know how the likes of Red Bull get away with it.
Yeah, we're reaching a dangerous point now where I think as this goes on, we're going to see more and more individuals owning multiple teams across different countries. And that's not going to be very good, I think.
No, because what they called themselves, the official name, like the City Group or whatever, they've got a team in every continent. Now they're saying that they're going to buy another team. Is it in South America? And it's just like, well, you're not allowed to do that. So why are you doing it when you know you're not allowed to do that? So it's almost like they know they can bend the rules, which is even more frustrating for a football fan that doesn't want a monopoly in football.
Well, we know that FIFA's already very corrupt. So,
Do we? What? FIFA's corrupt? Got you there for a second.
Yeah, I was like, Dan, no, you can't be.
yeah. I mean, this is going to be another conversation. I think that we're going to need to make another pod on it because we can continue talking about this for a very long time. So, FIFA does things their own way, and they all do things however financially advantages them. So,
yeah,
I'm guessing the City Group have presented them with a little bit of money on the side to say, be quiet. We just want to get on with it. Conquer football. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm just thinking if the Newcastle deal goes through.
It's fallen through from what I know.
Oh, really?
Basically, long story short, Saudi Arabian TV company called BN Sports. I don't know if you've heard of them. They pirate quite a lot of the Premier League games, and the Premier League committee went, this is going to look really bad on us if we let this happen.
Oh, so there is some
going to kill us.
So there is some morality to them.
Weirdly enough, apparently there is.
Who would have thought it, eh? They actually won't let money talk for once. They'll actually do the right thing.
I think we can't speak too soon because before you know it, they'll probably give them some money on the side and the Premier League will say, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, well,
I bet they'll, this coming season, they'll clean all of that up. They'll make it so that TV station doesn't pirate any more of the Premier League games. And then they'll be able to say, oh, look, we're not dirty, we're completely clean. And then you can get someone to buy them potentially.
Yeah, I've heard there was an offer from, was that an American? Like 350 million for Newcastle. I didn't read into it, unfortunately, so I don't remember much of it. But from what I know there was a new owner looking to get in, and Mike Ashley was very happy with it, so he accepted it. But of course, there's a lot more to it than just accepting an offer.
Yeah, exactly. There's hoops they've got to jump through.
Yeah, so God forbid, I'm all against, not because he's going to bring money in, but because of the morality of sport and just human rights and whatnot, that the new owners of Newcastle, the Saudi Arabian owners, I don't know who the American owners are, but the Saudi Arabian owners have, I think that would just cause a load of rubbish, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could go on for ages and ages about their free speech and human rights abuses, but you can go look that up yourself. But it's safe to say it's not really a democratic place. I'm pretty sure women have only just been able to drive in Saudi Arabia.
Well, yeah, on their own, yeah. It's
a mental place, man.
Yeah.
And I think on that's a pretty good point to end it. So, yeah.
Thank you for listening yet again. And we will be bringing out a pod on the new FIFA corruption case. I think now we've mentioned it, I think it will be good to go into a little bit more depth on it. So do stay in touch, and thanks for listening. And we will be bringing out a new pod on Friday. So
yeah. If you got to this point, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers.